Welcome back to another pen talk. Today we're going to be looking at a pen I recently added to my collection. You may not recognize the top of the box, but you certainly will recognize the side. And you'll see I've added another Delta to my collection. This is number 8. One of the things that you may not have known, because I haven't discussed it much, is I've always had a fascination with wooden fountain pens. So when I saw this was offered by Delta, I was very intrigued. I took a little bit of more effort than I am used to. I have been blacklisted by the seller on eBay, Montemeriden, which I've bought a lot of all my other Deltas from them on eBay and never had any issues, but apparently for some reason I'm not allowed to bid anymore. But they've established their own website, which I'll put in my description, which is excellent, and the pricing is actually better on their website than it is on eBay. So there is an option, and this pen was bought directly from them, from the website. Sadly, if you're interested, it's no longer on the website. There was a limited amount of them, and they seem to be gone. I love the box has a little subtle grain pattern that you can see in the paper, kind of simulating wood grain. Very nice how Delta does that in subtlety. Inside the outer sleeve is a nice kind of faux leather pen box. And as we open this up, we'll see a classic Delta presentation mode. Nice literature. They always seem to be very proud of the pens that they put together, and discusses the Seawood collection, as they call it. As you can see, it comes in two major versions. I have the darker one. There's also a lighter wood, and it comes in fountain pen, ballpoint, and rollerball. Basically, this is turned from exotic Iroko wood, which is considered by some people to be African teak. It's also a capture converter filling system, and typical fashion, the pen has a unique identification serial number on it, and we have the official stamp from the seller and the date of the sale. We got the little authentication pamphlet and the instruction pamphlet. It comes with a bottle of ink. I've tried some of the Delta ink I've gotten with pens, and it's not been my favorite ink. It's a little bit thick. So this is the pen. I just love the wood grain. There's nothing in nature that's going to compare to the variety and the texture and the feel that wood has. This has to be one of the more substantial Delta clips I've ever had on a pen. It is pretty strong. At the top of the pen, we see the Delta logo. It's nice metal. I mean, the pen is really substantially made. It feels well in the hand. What's interesting, and this is the first Delta pen that I have that has the capture converter system, and they actually call it capture converter, which I think is excellent. I will tend to always fill it the traditional way. It's an unscrew cap. And as you'll notice, the section is also a resin material. They've tried to give it the pattern like wood. Obviously, the color doesn't match, but I think the contrast works well, and the rhodium trim works well. This is a steel nib. I got medium, and when we do the writing sample, I'll compare this to the other steel nibs I have from Delta, so you can get an idea of the thickness of the line based on how they describe the nib. To use the converter in a regular way, you just unscrew the section, and you can see it's a capture converter. It has a Delta converter on it. They all work extremely well. You know, they hold a decent amount of ink for a converter, and this just extends out beyond the end of the cap to allow you to fill it. I've already filled the pen with ink. That's pretty much an easy thing to do. Again, just kind of look at the way the pen is made. Notice they've done a lot to strengthen wood, because wood obviously probably wouldn't handle the tension that you would get from some of the actions of capping a pen It does post very nicely and very securely. One of the problems that I found is if you don't post it very well, it'll unscrew the cap at the end of the barrel, but that's a minor problem. It's a nice a feed system here on the nib, and I've used this pen for a week and I've been very, very happy with the way that it writes. So enough for this. Let's take a look at how it writes. One of the things that viewers have requested is do a comparison when I do a review of a new pen. So I picked 3 pens to compare it to. The Seawood is not a small pen, so I got your TWSBI 580, your Pelican M800, and a Jinhao X450. As you can see, they're all pretty close to being the same length. So as we uncap, I'll take a look at them from the nib and barrel perspective. Nibs are all pretty good size. The TWSBI has the smallest nib on it, and TWSBI also has the longest length. So we try to look at them like that. And we'll just do a close-up drive-by of the nibs. Not exactly the easiest thing to do, but we'll put them together. Get the camera to focus, and there's the Delta, the TWSBI, the Pelican, and the Jinhao. I wanted to use brown ink for this pen. I thought it goes well with the pen. And J. Herbin ink has been one of my favorites recently. I have a couple of bottles. The colors are great, saturation's great, and the flow just seems to work well with the Delta pens. I've noticed as I have more pens and more ink, there's definitely certain inks that work better with certain pens. I don't think there's any way of actually figuring that out until you ink the pen and put it to paper. So the first thing you notice when you touch this nib to paper, it is as smooth as any nib I've ever used. It lays down a decent amount of ink. I'd call it on the wet side. It just glides across the paper. And I just enjoy writing with it. The challenge that you're going to have, at least the challenge that I've had recently, is the nib doesn't have a lot of character to it. It's very consistent. Ink flow is great. I've never had any hard starts or skipping with it. So what I thought we would do is compare this to 3 other Deltas which have steel nibs. Some of them are fusion nibs, so I think as far as the actual point of the nib touching paper, fusion and the steel nibs have the same writing characteristics. We'll start first with my mid-size Dolce Vita Oro. So this is a extra fine fusion nib, and this ink is purple ink. Again, another J. Herbin ink. I would say that this nib is certainly not as wet as the medium steel in the Seawood. If you can also take a look at the size of the nibs, which I think is interesting. There is basically they're the same size. You can take a look at how the fusion nib compares. I'll take a look at the tipping material there, and the extra fine is pretty fine. So I'm very happy with the extra fine and how it writes. And it is as smooth as the medium. Many times a fine nib is not quite as smooth. None of these require any pressure to write with. There is no real flux to any of these nibs either. Now we're going to look at my Delta Capri Night, which I got a while ago. I did individual videos on all these pens. So this is a fine steel nib. And this is a different ink. It's an Iroshuku in my nice little sample bottle here. I have a couple of those. And this nib is also very, very smooth. Lays down a little bit more ink than the extra fine did, but it still just glides across the paper. I love this color with this pen. It's just a really nice deep blue with a little bit of turquoise in it. And now we're going to go to another pen that I have. This is also a Delta Capri. This is the Grande. I've also done a particular review on this pen in specific. And this is a Fusion, but it's in broad. And as you can see, it has a decent amount of tipping material on it. It's a little bit different feed. The Delta feeds seem to vary slightly from pen to pen. So this is a broad Fusion nib. And this pen I use every day. I have it inked up with a green ink. I thought that would be appropriate. And again, another J. Urban ink. This has been extremely consistent. As you can see, the ink flow is very similar to the fine. For some reason, I think the nib in the Seawood as a medium is actually pretty closer to a broad than a medium, and it certainly puts out more ink than any of the other nibs do. It's just amazing, like the consistency of all the Delta pens that I've had. I mean, these nibs are just perfect. The flow is great. I have no issues whatsoever with them. As you know, I had Mike at work grind me a left oblique on my Delta Zen. That was a 14 karat gold point, and that is great. It has a lot of character to it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little look at a unique kind of wooden pen, and also the different nibs that Delta makes. So thank you for viewing. Hopefully this was educational, enjoyable, and we will bid you adieu until the next video. Have great writing experiences. Bye.